Hello and welcome to Rallying the Forge. I am Solymr, and today's episode we kind of have a special episode here. We have a little mini series within the series, and we're going to call this one Silver Bullets. And what we're going to be talking about today is how to prevent Arboris from getting to 100-100 in cycle 3 or 4, or trying to deal with that Chrogias, and things you can do to try to help yourself defeat decks that utilize those. Now, obviously, some of those decks can be really good, and it's just going to be hard to beat, period. And they, for Chrogias decks in particular, and Arboris decks too, they both lean heavily into Nekrium, which is going to be a big part of what I'm going to be talking about today. So, what we have is, for new players, they're not going to understand what Arboris does until he lands on the table and he's 100-100. And for other players who aren't necessarily new but are trying to learn the game, I think this is going to be a good episode for you to learn about different cards from different sets that you can potentially utilize, find in your collection, and start forming some decks that are going to help you against a deck with an Arboris where you can help get your opponent down below 50 health. For the most part, Arboris decks are not very strong with health gain. They have some, but they don't have a lot where it's constant coming in. People pair it with a Nekrium half to be able to get that life gain going, and that's what they really rely on, is the Nekrium half. So I'm gonna show you a dozen or more cards. I'm gonna show you a ton of cards, spells, creatures, exalts that are things you can potentially use to keep pinging your opponent down, bringing them below health, potentially help you make a fuse that's going to be able to beat an Arboris deck in these SFCS events that they're so popular in. They won't help you with Chrogias so much, but by their nature, the deck archetype is more aggressive. If you press on your opponent, you might be able to obviously beat them before they can get the level 3 Chrogias out. So let's jump in. If you don't know what Arboris is, it's a dragon that's in set 2 and 3, and if you have more than 50 health, more than 50 health, it gets plus 85, making it 100-100 with breakthrough. Obviously, you can use Botanimate, you can use Dreadbolt to get rid of it, but you got to have it in hand. And if they're off Forge, they can drop it second, and then you have to hope that your next turn you get it. Otherwise, it's going to be on the board, and nothing you can do if you don't have the removal. Chrogias as well. We'll pull him up, and he cannot be affected by spells or abilities, so your only way to beat him is with combat. It helps having a couple big creatures in your deck that can take a hit or two, bring him down within range where you could play a mid-level creature to take him out. You're going to eat some damage on that, so you don't want to be too low in health, but he's a lot harder to get rid of, which is why you want to be more aggressive in your strategy to beat people who are using these types of decks. So that's those two. There's also Rotting Arboris. If they have 10 less or less health, then they get 100-100 Arboris out there, but it's the Dark Forged version. Obviously, if they're at 10 less health or less, you're doing pretty well. You don't want to lose to them still, but this one you can't stop unless you keep their life up. So if they're playing a Dark Forged deck, just be on the lookout for it. But this one's going to be less common in the format because hit points are much more valuable for your scores. So I wouldn't worry about Rotting Arboris so much. But we do have Arboris. We do have Chrogias. Mostly we're going to be talking about things to how to keep Arboris off the board or make him so he's just a 15-15, which is still a decent-sized breakthrough body. But it's definitely nothing like the 100-100 he could be. So we'll just start over here. It's going to be across all sets, whether it's set 1, 2, 3, or 4, whether it's spells, exalts, creatures. We have a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to cover everything. I'm not going to give a guide on what the best decks are entirely to use for everything. I'm going to be going through individual cards and how they can help you keep your opponent on edge. Obviously, you need to remove their threats from the board. And some of these cards, the Nekrium parts, are going to be ones you need to get rid of because they're going to use them to gain life, just like you could be using it to bring your opponent down. So that's something to think about. Obviously, there's a card, like RSE decks. They're very aggressive. You flip RSE turn 1, and your opponent's already backpedaling. He's got to defend against that. These decks are going to be geared a lot towards Spellslinger type decks, and just aggressive decks in general. So take that into consideration when thinking about things. By no means is this a guaranteed you have this card and Arboris won't come out as 100/100. You do have to work for it, but having these types of cards in your deck can really put a strain on your opponent when they're hovering right around 50. Just bringing them under that 50 mark really can ruin their day when they draw Arboris and they can't play him for 100/100. So just something to think about. So let's jump in here. We've got Elemental Discovery. The early version of the spell here, you get to choose 2 things first off, but you can deal 5 damage to the enemy player. Then you have 7 damage, and then we have 9 damage. So it's a lot of damage just to hit your opponent with. It's a great spell. This one works well with minions as well. You play the Spell Swarm, deal the 9 damage. If you have minions on the board, Spell Swarm minions or Spell Sprites, they get buffed from you playing the spell. So it works with those minion spell slinging type decks. Alternatively, if you have something with stealth or breakthrough, give something 12 attack if you want and deal the 9 damage. That's potentially 21 damage there. So this is definitely a nice card to have. Even if it's only level 1, it's still 5 damage. That could bring them down depending on where they're at in health. Obviously, if they're playing a life gain deck, they're probably going to be above. If they're playing a true life gain deck, they don't have Arboris. Just going to say, they don't have Arboris. So they can play the Nekrium half and have all sorts of life gain, but if they're playing Arboris, they don't have the power that a true life gain deck could have. So Elemental Discovery. This is set for Tempys. There's other cards. I probably can't see it here. I probably am not going to find it here now. Going the wrong way with it. There it is. So in set 4, we also have Glacier. Now this is the abominable version, but whatever version you have would work. If it is in the same deck as Elemental Discovery, awesome. When a creature moves lanes, you deal 2 damage to the enemy player, 3 at level 2, and level 3 is 5 damage. So that's just for moving. So you can drop him, move him, 5 damage instantly to the player. If you have other movement in your deck, every move counts. If your opponent's moving stuff around, every move counts. So this is a quick way to bring your opponent down quickly and make the Arboris strategy moot. So you can find both of these in the same deck. These are set 4 Shadows over Soulless. So if you do the Battle Pass, you get towards the end, they have a booster Phantoms and a full booster you get to keep. If one of them's on the pay track, maybe both, I'm not positive, but if you paid for the Battle Pass $10, you'll definitely get both of those boosters, opportunities to get cards like this. So that's Glacier. No matter the version you have, it can do pretty significant damage. And like I said, Elemental Discovery, also set 4. Another set 4 card, this is Nekrium. So if you have a lot of set 4 decks, if you're a new player and that's what you've got, the monthly Phantoms are set 4 currently. So opportunities to get cards like this, Vampiric Hunger. You deal damage to a creature, and then you attach this. It's an augment to one of your creatures. When you slay, you deal 3 damage to the enemy player, and you get 3 health. So this one, the level 2 is 5 and 5, and then 7 and 7. So on a creature, when you kill one of theirs, obviously you gain 7, they lose 7. So this is life gain and drain. It's a good augment can be hard to get a lot of value out of because your opponent's going to try and make sure that creature gets off the board because this can really stack up after a couple turns. So that's, after 3 turns, if it killed something, they've taken 21 damage from it and you've gained a 21 health. They'd almost be better just letting the creature go through depending on its attack. So Vampiric Hunger, though, a Nekrium spell for set 4. We've then got Soul Reap. This is a set 1 card, and you want to have a beast for this one. This one, a lot of beasts in Nekrium, a lot of beasts in Utera. So depending on what you're pairing things with. And I will say almost all of these cards, if not all of the cards, are going to be Nekrium and Tempys. Nekrium Tempys is more of a control style build, aggro, things of that nature. So almost all of these are going to be those 2 factions. I'm not saying you have to play Tempys and Nekrium together, although if you really wanted to, an aggressive strategy could work well for you. If you wanted to play Nekrium with Utera with a lot of this life gain and drain stuff, you can do that. If you want to play Tempys with something else and be aggressive, you can do that. So lots of options out there, but I'm just going to say most of these cards, if not all, are going to be Nekrium and Tempys. But Soul Reap, 3 damage to a creature, you gain health. If you have a beast, you also do 3 damage to the player, and you gain 3 more health. It's 5 across the board, and then 7 across the board at level 3. So again, with a beast in play, this is massive damage. You also get to potentially remove a threat off the board from your opponent. It's a very good spell if you have beasts. Okay, next card, Thundercrash Field. This is an exalt spell in set 2. You can see here you play a spell sprite minion in this lane. When one of your creatures in this lane gains attack, you deal 2 damage to enemy player. So spell sprites and spell swarm minions, as I mentioned earlier, when you play a spell, they get boosted attack. Well, if they're in this lane, it's going to deal 2 damage to enemy player every time they go up. So if you play multiple spells, they are going to get multiple gains of health, multiple damage to the opponent. The level 2 puts another exalt out there. It's just 2 damage per lane. The level 3, 2 damage per lane, but then you get to play a spell swarm minion in each Thundercrash field. So it kind of replenishes your minions on the board on the exalts. They stay out there the entire time, and then you're potentially doing 6 per turn every time you play a spell with 3 minions in these lanes. It can add up quite a bit, combined with other things that you might have going on with your deck combination. This can be a really good way to wear your opponent down and definitely keep them below 50 health. Next up, we have Sacrifice Chamber. This is an exalt from set 3, and your creatures in this lane have Slay, deal 3 damage to the enemy player to gain 3. So this is like the Vampiric Hunger in set 4. That one's an augment. This is an exalt. It stays on the board. It's in that lane. It's 3 and 3. It'll be 5 and 5 at level 2. Plus you get to give a creature plus 3 attack. And then the level 3 is plus 5 attack and 7 and 7. So the Soul Reap, Sack Chamber, Vampiric Hunger, they're all staying 3, 5, 7. This one, like I said, is on the board, so any creature you put here gets this ability, and if they're killing things, you're doing damage to the player plus gaining health back, which is really good. It can be so powerful. There's a lot of combinations you can use with Sack Chamber. A lot of decks out there that people have tried to use to manipulate this. You put a Grimgaunt Predator on this, for example, and if it's a level 3 version, it just destroys creatures, and every time it destroys a creature, it does damage to the player, which triggers it again, and you can just wipe the opponent's board, unless they have Chrogias, of course. But you can kill off all their other creatures. So very good exalt, potentially play with. So I think we've had stuff from set 1, 2, 3, and 4 so far, showing you that there's stuff in every set you can use to keep your opponent down. Of course, we have the old traditional Lightning Spark from set 1. It's 5 damage to a creature or player, 8, and then the level 3 is 10. So it's just face damage to your opponent if you want. It can instantly bring them down. You lose an action basically by doing that, but it might prevent them from bringing out a 100 Arboris, and definitely worthwhile in that regard. Next card, Dissonant Siphon, another set 1 card. This one, it deal 3 damage to the enemy player to gain 3 health. You can destroy one of your creatures to play level 1 card for free. Each time it goes 4 damage and 4 health. Destroy a card, play level 1 or 2, and it's 5 damage and 5 health. And you can destroy a card to play a card for free. So a lot of times with Dissonant Siphon, you might be looking to have some minions on the board that you can sack, whether it's a Wisp, a Zombie, Spell Sprite, whatever. Something you don't need on the board anymore to put something brand new out there, full health, extra plays. Free plays are always great. So this is a great card to have, and if you're doing a Nekrium half with whatever else you're pairing, this is definitely a card to look for. Next, we have Elementalist Ritual, which is great with elementals. If you have this with a Thunder Crash field or an RC deck or both, this card is awesome. So if you have an elemental in play, you get to choose 2. Otherwise, you're just choosing one of these. You can increase non-combat damage you deal this turn by 2. You can deal 3 damage to a creature or player directly, and deal 2 damage to all non-elemental creatures. So if you have elementals on the board, you could use this. If you get 2 choices, you could increase non-combat damage by 2, and then do 2 damage to all non-elemental creatures. This will do 4 across the board at the level 1 version here to all non-elemental creatures, or you could hit your opponent in the face for 5 with that. And if you have Thunder Crash Field on the board, pumping up a Sprite or a Spell Swarm minion, that's going to do 4 damage now instead of 2. So lots of little ways you can use this. This card works really well with elementals, really strong. People talk about Aloin with Cyprian Augmentation and how strong that is. This is the equivalent for Tempys. This card is the equivalent of how strong it is. You can see the numbers 353 and 474. So this can do some major damage to a player if you wanted it to. And if you have, like I said, Thunder Crash Field or RC in the deck, these types of things can really boost their stats up and do some extra damage. Really good card. Feeding Frenzy. This is set 4 Nekrium. So it plays. This one's going to lean more towards minion type strategies, which you can find plenty of in set 4. But you play a mindless zombie minion, you deal 2 damage to the enemy player, and gain 2 health for each minion you have in play. You could have a board full of minions. You could have 3 minions. It's 6 damage, 6 health with 3 on the board. So lots of minion possibilities with set 4. They have plenty of summoning cards or other things that play minions. So you can find minion decks in set 4. Not everything has to be Verlana or certain other cards, but you can build a minion deck with Feeding Frenzy, and it can do a lot of damage. 2 and 2, 3 and 3, and 4 and 4. A full board with minions would be 20 damage to your opponent and 20 health for you. That's a 40-point swing in health. So that's something to consider. Obviously, there's more to it than just having minions. You got to be able to keep them on the board, have health, get that far. You're going to need some other things to work with it, and there's plenty of options out there to make that work. But definitely a powerful card dealing damage to your opponent. Set 1, Conflagrate. This one, you can choose up to 2 creatures or players, and each mage you haven't played increases the damage, but this does some direct damage to the opponent. 4 damage increases by 2 at level 3 for each mage. If you've got 3 mages out there, this is doing 10 damage to 4 different creatures or players. This is something you can hit them in the face with. Normally, you'll see mages in decks like this. You could pair it with another deck that has mages. But this can definitely hit for a ton and can help your board state a lot and keep that Arboris from getting 100. Chain Lightning, set 3 card, plays a Spell Sprite minion, and when you give a creature plus attack this turn, you deal 2 damage to an enemy player. So this is kind of like a temporary Thunder Crash field on the board for your creatures. Spell Sprite minions, of course, are going to get buffed from playing a spell. So this is 2 damage across the board. and lets you play more minions. So obviously you'd want this in a spell slinging type deck. You'd want to be able to play a bunch of spells with it. So you want to be heavy on the spells. So it takes a certain setup to do, but if you can, that can add up quickly, that much damage. You do a couple spells, every time, each spell, each increase is giving the 2 damage each time. So it can be really good. I know there's been some theory crafting on some combinations with Chain Lightning that can make it go off really well. You have to look in the Discord to find those thoughts, though, or ask in the Discord about it. I don't recall the exact basis for the deck, but I do remember people being very interested in Chain Lightnings, or at least maybe Betrayer Chain Lightnings. One of the best spell cards you could have, Flame Jet. It does 5 damage to enemy player. You can play it for free if you take 5 damage. You take the damage first, though. You take the 5 damage to deal 5 damage. That's 7 and 7 or 9 and 9. You don't have to play it free if you don't want to, but you can, and it's a nice bonus card to play on top of playing 2 other cards. You eat the 9 damage, but they're also taking that 9 damage, and it might be more valuable to have them take that 9 damage. You might have more health and can afford it. But it's a great card to have with a lot of synergies. Never disappointed to see a Flame Jet in a deck. This one's a twofer. So we have a Doom Poltergeist. First you have Doom, and then we'll have the Poltergeist portion. So Doom is deploy. You may destroy another one of your creatures to deal 5 damage to a creature or player. So you can play a Doom creature, sack another one, and do 5 damage to their face. The Poltergeist portion is deploy. If one of your creatures was destroyed this turn, deal 3 damage to a creature or player. You gain 3 health. So it works out really well when it's a Doom Poltergeist because you can sack the creature, deal the 5 damage, then do 3 more damage and gain 3 health. So that's just the level 1. Level 2 is 5 and 7, and then 7 and its attack equal to the attack of the creature. So if you have something big on the board, you could just chuck it. If they got a blocker and it doesn't have breakthrough, you could just chuck it at their face with this guy. And that could be more valuable than you could ever imagine. So really, really good combination, Doom Poltergeist. But obviously hard to come by, not common. But it's an option if you have one. You can build a deck around it if you have a good pull with it. All right, next up, one of my favorites I love using, Vampiric Creeper. And this one, he's also, by the way, a beast, which we talked about earlier. He's got 2 deploys. This is also 2. The Creeper and the Vampiric are 2 separate things. So Vampiric is going to do 2 damage to a player, and you gain 2 health just by playing them. And it's obviously Vampiric. The next levels are more damage, more health gain. The Creeper part is they take 5 damage unless they destroy one of their creatures. So you get a little board control out of it, or they're going to eat some damage. This is huge. First turn of a match, you can do 7 damage to your opponent if they have nothing on the board. You gain 2 health. They take 7. That's a big hurt to a deck trying to play Arboris because they just don't have the life gain that Arboris decks typically need. You can see here 6, 3 and 3. 7, 5, and 5. Big damage. And later in the match, he's only a 7-9 at level 3, but they have to take 7 damage or destroy a creature, which if they have creatures to sacrifice, fine, but if not, that can be big 7 damage there. It's taking 5 no matter what, and you gain 5. So, such a good card. Another 2 for 1 here. We have the Shambling Shambler. So we have Shambling and we have Shambler, and the effect is the same. On a Shambling Shambler, it's times 2. So when one of your creatures is destroyed, deal 1 damage to a player, and you gain 1 health. So this happens twice per creature that dies on one of your creatures die anyway. So Shambling is one of the effects, and Shambler is the other effect. You could have a Shambling something or something Shambler and get this effect, but just be 1 time. You see it twice here. Level 2, it's 2 damage, 2 health. 3 damage, 3 health. This adds up when you've got a lot of creatures on the board if they're wiping things out. Now, typically they're going to try and wipe this guy off the board, but if they don't, they're going to be eating a lot of damage. You can chuck blockers at their big creatures that don't have breakthrough, and you're going to get shambling procs from it. That's beneficial. If your shambler can live and not die every turn that he's out there, it can be massive damage for your opponent. So typically when he's out there, you need to get him off the board. If you have him out there, you want him to survive as much as you can. This can change the entire outcome of a game alone, whether it's a shambling creature or a shambler itself. Another great card for Nekrium. Life Gain and Drain, Darkheart Sorcerer. He works really well with spell slinging decks. The more spells you play, the more procs you're going to get off him. He's 2 damage to per spell played to a player, and 2 health gain for you. 3 and 3 at level 2, and 5 and 5 at level 3. Again, if your opponent has him out there, you need him off the board ASAP. If you have him out there, you want him to live. He's hard to get rid of. He's got Defender. If you're not on Forge, you can't put creatures up against him yet. You have to wait a turn. If you need removal, if you can't do that, you're going to need Dreadbolts, Botanimates, other means to deal damage to him. If your opponent is playing, if you're playing with him and you have a spell slinging deck and you could potentially play 3 spells on a turn, that's 15 damage dealt and 15 health gain, 30-point swing in 1 turn. He's out there for 2 or 3 turns, the game's over at that point. So you got to consider it. This is a very strong card to use. Obviously, you need other cards in the deck to make this work and get that far, but he's definitely a card you can look to build around. One of my favorite commons, Gloom Reaper Hag. When this is destroyed at all 3 levels, it deals 3 damage to the player, and you gain 3 health. So it's just a little bit of a health gain and damage to your opponent, but he comes out as a 7/5 at level 1. That's really good stats for a level 1 creature. It's becoming a little bit less so with the small power creep that happened in set 4, but overall, it's still very strong. He doesn't get much bigger, 8/6 and then 9/8, so he doesn't get much bigger, but he's a great threat to have on the board. That little extra damage, again, if they're sitting at 50 health and trying to get above, 3 damage is a lot for them to have to recover from, depending on what they're going on with their deck. A lot of players are probably very familiar with this card from the starter deck events. Fire Fist Uranti. It can deal damage to a creature or player every turn. Now, it starts out small, 1 damage, 2 damage. The level 3 is based on its attack. It starts out at 4 damage that you can do to the player. If you pump his attack up, it's going to do whatever his attack is. You pump it up by 10, he's doing 14 damage to the player every turn that he's out there. He's a defender. He's hard to get rid of. If you're playing a control-style deck with a Fire Fist Uranti, you probably have something to pump his attack, or you can pair it with something that can bring some pump to his attack. Every faction has something to pump attack of their creatures. So you can find something to pair it with if you want to pump his attack up. You don't want all your eggs in one basket, because if you don't level him up early or don't draw him, you don't want to be, that would be your only win condition, but he's definitely a strong creature to have out there, and a threat that needs to be neutralized immediately by your opponent if they're trying to get Arboris out on the board. This one is more for the firebranding ability, or forge modifier, I should say. So that one is going to be the bottom portion here, and that is the deploy. If one of your creatures was destroyed this turn, deal 6 damage to an enemy player. So you can play this as the second action, or if your deck has things that you can sack your own creatures. Maybe you've got a Blight Witch out there. You ate one of your guys to play a spell for free. Well, now that one of your creatures was destroyed this turn, you can drop this, and it deals 6 damage to the enemy player. It is 6 damage across the board, no matter what level it is. But it's a nice modifier. It's a nice little bonus damage you get to do to your opponent that they might not see coming. And again, it's one of those things that can help bring your opponent down, keep them below 50 health. So we have Invokist, which is the activate portion of this. If you played a spell this turn, deal 2 damage to a creature or player. So obviously it's not a whole lot early on. It's 3, and then it's 5 at level 3, but it is activate. So if they don't kill it the next turn, you can play a spell again and do 5 more damage, additional damage. So again, another card that can be really good, really useful. It can work well with RC decks. A lot of other combinations that with Nekrium and Tempys that can utilize this. Spell slingers. This card's great in spell slingers. We have a Serum Mecha Mage, basically the same thing. You played a spell, deal damage. It's on an activate, but his hit points just aren't as good. It's 4 damage to a creature or player, 6, and then it's 8. This is a lot of damage. You can clear lanes with it. You can do it directly to a player's face if you want. His stats aren't great, so you want to protect him. He doesn't need to be the biggest threat on the board. So if you've got other things to pair him with, this card, though, is really, really good and can do some big damage, especially if your opponent doesn't remove him. You play him off Forge, second action. You get the 8 damage right there, and at the start of the next turn, you can do another 8. That's 16 damage for him. That's pretty good. Not to mention he's still on the board, and they have to remove him. So we do have an Aloyan card here, a little bit different. I wanted to think wide on everything. I did try to find some additional cards as we get towards the end here that could be useful, that aren't typical. I'm not saying this card's great by any means, but Specimen, if at the end of the turn, if you take no damage, you can deal damage to a creature or player. Now early on it's 1 damage, then it's 5 damage at level 2. That means you have to block all the damage. You can't take any damage. That means you don't want them to have breakthrough. You don't want them to do any face damage to you. It's hard to pull off, but it's not impossible. The level 3 version does damage equal to, it'll have a number here, but it always matches their printed hit points, their printed health on the card. So there's some versions, I don't remember if it's a charge-plated version or what version it is. There's one that has like 34 health. Well, that 34 health can block a Arboris and live, or not Arboris, a Chrogias and live, and also deal 34 damage to the opponent if you don't take any other damage. 34 damage can be game-ending for a player. But this is a card where if maybe you're playing something that has this in it, it's just something else to think about. There are other cards outside of Nekrium and Tempys that can do damage to the opponent's face. Stormcaller. This one's a nice one in a spell slinging deck. Early on, it's just 3 damage, or you get to play a spell for free. Free plays are awesome. It's 7 damage at the level 2. It's a lot more damage, or you get a free spell out of it. And at level 3, it's 10 damage, or you get a free spell out of it. And depending on the time of the game, if you've got them low, this is a great card to drop where they might not be able to take the 10 damage. You do get the free spell no matter what. Or if they take the 10 damage, they lose maybe. But this is such a powerful card, depending on what with a good hand, with the right draw. Free spells are always nice. And then spell slingers, you probably want them anyway. You've probably got some minions on the board that need pumping. So this card can be really, really good. It's got good attack numbers at each level. 7, 9, 12. Low hit points, but they still have to deal with it. Even if they chump block it, it takes up one of their resources. So really, really good card. We have another blue card, an Aloyan card, Apocamancer. So maybe you don't have any of these other cards from Nekrium or Tempys, or you just have one of the sets. You don't have Tempys cards, maybe you got Nekrium, or vice versa. You can look to see if you got Apocamancer. So Apocamancer decks, when you replace a creature in another lane, you deal 3 damage to a creature or player. You can choose that, do that to a player if you want. Every time you replace a creature in a different lane and he's out there, it's damage to a creature or player. Apocamancer level 2 is 5 damage. Level 3, 7 damage. A lot of times with these types of decks, you're looking for things that can generate minions, gizmos. If you have stuff that can play multiple gizmo minions or minions, period, you can stack them on top of each other, and you can get this to go off several times in one turn. It's not unheard of to see this go off, 4 or 5 times in a turn. That's significant damage. 28, 35 damage to your opponent. when they weren't necessarily expecting it. And if you're worried about Arboris coming down, this can bring a player down below that 50 hit point threshold. These decks are really good. So I don't think it's going to show. It doesn't show. Does it? No. So I can't show what I wanted with it. But Bones of Solace, when you transform it, it does 6 damage to the opposing player and you gain 6 health. All of them do that. What other abilities they have are irrelevant for the purpose of this. It's just about the 6 damage when it transforms. And typically Bones of Solace decks, you're going to have a Soul Swap or maybe Dark Rebirth or the Soul Reaver instead of Soul Swap. But those are really strong abilities that you can use to your advantage. So if you can find one of those, that'll help you. But the 6 damage and 6 health gain, just another card, potential opportunity there if you have a deck. And lastly, Saffron Chrome. It is a very, very strong card. Players cannot gain health. Just stop your opponent from gaining health, period. They're gonna need to get rid of this card if that's the case. If he's out there and they're trying to get Arboris out and they don't have above 50 health, they got to take care of this creature before they play into their health gain cards or abilities. He's got 1 armor, 9 health at level 1, 6 attack. Very strong. This is maybe arguably the best level 1 card you could play as a creature, with just for stats wise, not necessarily ability wise. But a 6/9 with 1 armor, even if they're not playing life gain, great body to put out there. Big body. Level 2, 7/10 with 2 armor. So he doesn't scale up quite the same, but it's still strong. 2 armor, 10 health. Still good. And then the level 3, 8/12 with 4 armor. Again, doesn't scale up quite as well, but still a problem your opponents need to deal with. So this card can definitely be a problem. It comes in the Scientist decks. You can see the logo there. So you do need to purchase the Beakers and Bones decks, Aloyan, and hope you get one with some good combos. There's a lot of good combinations you can get out of there. You can get Drixes. You can get all sorts of Scientists, lots of Gizmo generation. Maybe pair it with getting a Pokemancer in one of those decks. I don't know. You can. You could use a Betrayer Pokemancer deck with it. There are those out there in the Pokemancer, and Nekrium, or Tempys. Pair it with some of these other cards that you're seeing, and bring your opponent's health down to don't let them gain any health. So another good card. And that's the last one I have. Now, this is not all inclusive. It's pretty thorough, I would say. I would say it's at least a good 50% of the creatures and spells that you could use. Anything with Blast, I didn't pull anything up with Blast, but anything with Blast also can help. Blast decks can do some work for you as well. That's going to be in set 4. Let's see if there's anything else I missed. There are some Soulbinds, some legendaries, the Aether Scale, Steel Scale, and Rage Scale dragons, the Dragon Wake Soulbind with Cinder Smoke Wyvern. What else? I think I covered pretty much everything else. Darkforge decks are very aggressive. Now, those ones do like to bring your health down quite a bit. So you're playing with your points there and also making it easier for your opponent to potentially kill you if they get some really strong stuff out. But the Darkforge decks can do some work. And they're aggressive enough that if your opponent's trying to slow play things to get a Chrogias out, you might overrun them before they can get Chrogias out. So there's lots of options out there. You want to be aggressive. Tempys is really great for aggression. I didn't talk about any of the Omnis. There are some Omnis you can use to also do damage to the player with combinations there. So a lot of aggressive decks can work against Chrogias. You know, if they've got a really strong life gain and drain deck combination with a Chrogias in it, look, that's the top archetype in the game. You know, or one of the top archetypes in the game. Some of them are just going to be really, really hard to beat. That's where other things like Cyphron Chrome and other things come into play, that where they might make a big enough dent that it ruins your opponent's plans. But at the same time, you know, if you're aggressive enough, hopefully you can stave off Chrogias. You know, a cycle 3 turn 1 Chrogias is going to be tough no matter what you do. Then you got to hope you got big enough creatures that can take a few shots at it and get it off the board. Because once that's gone, if they can't reanimate it, you know, you're in good shape most of the time. And then, of course, like I said, Arboris. This should be easy to keep a player below 50 health. New players probably don't know about this series, aren't watching, so they probably don't know. But, you know, share the word. Let them know that this video exists to give them ideas on decks they can make, so they can look through their collection and try to find some of these cards and be like, oh, maybe I'll make something like this. And instead of trying to hunt for that Arboris deck that they can use, they can look at ways to beat it. And honestly, more often than not, if you can prevent your opponent from being able to get the 100 Arboris out, their deck's not going to be that strong overall. They're putting all their eggs in this basket, and it's a horrible basket to put in. It's got a lot of holes, and I just showed you a good at least dozen of them. So their dragon eggs are falling through, and hopefully this helps people start to beat down the Arboris and quit having the massive games where someone got the 100 out there, because it shouldn't be as frequent as it is unless people are throwing the matches to do this stuff. It's so easy to bring your opponent below 50 health. It's kind of crazy. So, and if they're using Arboris, they don't have the life gain needed to sustain the relentless assault from a Nekrium Tempys deck. So that's what I've got for this episode. I don't have a whole lot else for it. This was what I was wanting to do. I think I'm going to do this maybe like once a month. Come up with, discuss something as far as ways to defeat something, or maybe talk about other archetypes that are very strong and how to utilize them. But yeah, I wanted to make this, as the SFCS is very full of Chrogias and Arboris decks and Utera Nekrium life gain and drain decks. And don't get me wrong, they're good, but they can be beat, and most of the people playing with them right now are not as good as the top tier are. There are some out there, don't get me wrong, but most of these decks can be beat. Even if they draw poorly, they can be beat, but it's just hard. You got to have a good deck yourself. So hopefully this information helps newer players or intermediate players who maybe don't know all the cards or things of that nature. Like I said, I covered cards from all 4 sets, and hopefully you can find something in your collection to build the deck around to make sure you don't get hit with a level 3 100 Arboris. It'll take some practice and some work, but you can get there, and hopefully you find some new decks that you can make some new fuses and have some fun with the game. But I want to thank everyone for watching and being here, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to leave a comment, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Take care.